Hello everyone, this is Weather. In this update, we're going to be talking about a surface cyclone developing, bringing some snow and heavy rain, plus a sneak peek through the end of the year. So if you do like weather-related content, please subscribe to my channel as I will upload daily updates to keep you ahead of the storm. Good morning, everyone. This is your December the 19th update, and what we're taking a look at here is the overall radar depiction for this morning. And we actually had some snow into portions of Portland last night. They officially recorded like 0.2 inches. But yeah, it did actually creep down into some of the lower elevations there, bringing some kind of, light snow showers in that neck of the woods. Plus, even Boston actually had a changeover to some snow for them. And then down further to the south, we've got some colder air. I mean, 19 degrees in Oklahoma City, 34 in Dallas. So that was a pretty good shot of colder air that actually moved through, that brought all the heavier rains and some storms down here in the Houston area yesterday. Now that has actually shifted off, and they actually have a marginal risk for severe weather into portions of Florida and getting into portions of the southeast today with some of those heavier storms that's going to be along that boundary here in that cold front that's still pushing through off into the southwest. So let's kind of extend the view and take a look at some of these temperatures, these overall high temperatures for today on Sunday. And believe it or not, this is in the 40s for Texas with the low and the high. A lot of these places are going to be your coldest day of the season so far in much of Texas into Oklahoma, as well as Arkansas. It's a pretty good shot of cold air that's going to stick around for more than a day or two actually. But for the rest of the country, more or less kind of mild. It's been a very unusual warm December as to date. But things are kind of changing. Let's take a look at the overall setup for today, because that cold air is going to be in place. We have a developing surface low that's going to be starting to develop out here in West Texas. And we hinted at this yesterday. We could see some snow flurries and some snow out here in western Texas here. But as it gets into the hill country in central Texas, it's not going to accumulate or anything, but we're talking possibly some sleet pellets could be from rain transferring over to some sleet pellets. Even some lighter snow flurries at times is definitely not out of the question into portions of central Texas, where that developing low pressure system will kind of create that lift that's needed, and it will go over that colder air. And the temperatures in the 40s, it'll get down to the 30s tonight in much of Texas. So again, nothing's going to stick or accumulate in some of the bigger cities. It did actually somewhat accumulate in here into the higher elevations up towards Alpine into the Davis Mountains here. But that's the low pressure that we're going to be tracking for the next couple of days. It'll eventually get off into the Gulf of Mexico, is where we have that high pressure sinking into the backside. That's that drier air just kind of filtering in. And as we transition to that Monday time frame, we've got our surface cyclone that's developing into the Gulf of Mexico. Now, this is a non-tropical entity. It's not going to be a tropical type system at any nature, but it's going to be forming off a tail end of the front and taking advantage of some of those warmer Gulf temperatures. It's going to create a surface cyclone that's going to continue pushing off into portions of the southeast. It's going to bring some heavier rains into Louisiana and the Mississippi and Alabama, as well as Georgia and the Carolinas, and especially into Florida, because it looks to cross over Florida coming up on the day on Friday night, Monday night going into Tuesday. There's your snow well to the north into where they've got that colder air in place into Montana, as well as the Dakotas and much of northern Minnesota here. As we can continue to see some welcome rains off here into parts of Washington and Oregon, as well as northern California, where I did mention it did actually transfer into a little bit of a snow for the Portland Metroplex. That was a little bit of surprise. It never actually got below freezing, I don't think, but it was enough to have some accumulating, or at least to calculate for a little bit of snow in that region. So let's take a look at that surface low as we get into that Tuesday morning time frame. It should be hanging offshore of close to the Tampa area, bringing some heavier rains into that region. So this will continue to try to get its act together, and it'll cross over northern and central Florida as we go through the day on Tuesday. And then it continues kind of hugging the coast, bringing some heavier rains and some stronger storms along with it, and some little bit higher wind gusts, but mainly the higher wind gusts are going to be predominantly going to be offshore as this kind of tracks. It'll be over, essentially getting near North Carolina off the coast here by the time we get into Wednesday morning. And you can see by Wednesday afternoon, it really starts to deepen and kind of intensify down to a 988. So if this was a little bit closer inland, I've been a little bit further inland, it would be packing more of a punch than what it's going to be, but it's still going to be a formidable cyclone that's going to be taking place, a non-tropical type cyclone, bringing some heavier rains and along in its path. And I think that's where it kind of ends, because a lot of the indications and data, show this is going to be continuing to shift off out to sea and keeping the higher winds mainly off ashore. So let's take a look at the overall wind speeds from this particular surface low that we're going to be impacting over the next couple of days. And you can see it's going to be remaining over the open waters of the Gulf of Mexico. It is going to be crossing over into Florida. And so they could be seeing some tropical storm type wind gust at times with this particular low pressure system. And it'll be off the coast, getting into portions of Georgia, getting into near, like, say, Savannah, South Carolina areas. Then, getting into, portions of North Carolina with some higher wind gust in its path. But again, the highest wind gust is essentially going to be offshore. And I do feel that's going to be the case as it continues pushing through. So as we get into closer to a Christmas time frame, this is around, December the 23rd now on Thursday. We can see it clears out. That's the main setup for the next couple of days with this surface low down to the south. Once that kind of clears out, the rest of the country is pretty high and dry, and we're waiting for our next system that's coming on shore off the west coast. That's where they're going to be seeing some of those below average temperature anomalies, where the rest of the country is pretty much going to be warming up some areas in a big way, and expecting definitely a warmer Christmas Eve and a warmer Christmas Day for a good chunk of the country. And here's the 850 millibar. Now this is about 5,000 feet up, but it kind of shows you where the higher temperature anomalies are going to be predominantly in place, pretty much locked and loaded over Texas, over much of the deep south into southeast. Much of the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. is going to be seeing an above average Christmas Eve. The only below average temperature anomalies are going to be way out west. And then up here up to Canada, we're going to be seeing some of that much colder air and much more kind of Arctic air up in Canada, finally trying to move away from Alaska, where they've seen so much cold air as of late. And as we get into that Christmas Day, kind of the same deal. I mean, much of the south and the southeast and much of the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. is going to be experiencing an above average, Christmas Day forecast. So depends on how much snow's on the ground for some of the higher elevations. There's not really too many of you guys are actually going to be seeing a white Christmas this year. Yeah, the higher elevations and well to the north, but a good chunk of the country is just not going to happen because it's going to be well above average temperature anomalies. The colder air does try to slowly sink south, and we'll go over in this more detail. And it's going to be a slow process, but all the cold air is going to be bottled up into a good chunk of Canada and trying to enter portions of the United States towards the Pacific Northwest and getting into Montana. But here's your snow for between now and Christmas Day. Most of this was going to be falling over the next, or really today, from that snow event that we had the last 2 days up here in the upper portions of New England. There's the snow for Texas. Yeah, some of this this only shows accumulating snow. That's why it's well out far west. But yeah, there's not any accumulating snow into central Texas or North Texas or anything like that. But yeah, it's not out of the question. You could be seeing some of these little light snow flurries, fall from the sky into central Texas, sleet pellets, grapple at times. Most of it's going to be rain in this neck of the woods. And then there's your heavier snows, predominantly going to be in the ski countries and the ski resorts out here in the higher elevations. There's your rain setup between now and Christmas with our surface low. A good chunk of the rain is going to be, at least the heavier rain, is going to be remaining offshore. But once it gets into Florida, we could be looking at some heavier rains because it's going to be crossing over Florida. So you're talking places like the Panhandle of Florida, getting into portions of the central and southeastern Georgia, and pretty much all of Carolina, and pretty much a good chunk of the North Carolina as well, where that surface low is going to be close enough that's going to bring the heavier rains along with it. And some of these could be some flooding rains at time where that convective banding kind of really sets up. But you can see for a good chunk, or at least the midsection of the country where you've been predominantly dry, you're going to remain dry and through Christmas Day, where it's off. All the rain and the heavier rains is off the West Coast, and at times some of this could be changing over to the snow and into the higher elevations. But here's kind of the setup as we look kind of beyond Christmas, right? So we've had a very warm December, so there's subtle signs of things trying to change, somewhat. So let's take a look at the overall setup for December the 27th. Here's the overall, northern hemisphere view. Again, the ridge is pretty much dominant over much of the south and the central and eastern 2/3 of the U.S. We do see subtle signs of some colder air trying to again penetrate from Alaska, from Canada, and start to enter into our northwestern portions of the U.S., especially as you get into Montana, because you can see some of the temperature anomalies by the time we get into December the 27th. And there's your Arctic air. I mean, we're talking 20 below zero getting into Montana, into the teens below zero into the Dakotas, trying to enter South Dakota and getting portions into Wyoming with the much above average anomaly air as well to the south. And this colder air is going to take its sweet time. It's not going to move it's not going to move fast at all. So that's going to be bottled up into portions of the extreme northern parts of the U.S. And as we get into that 30th time frame, it slowly starts to sag. I mean, it's a slow process. It slowly starts to sag and it breaks down. So more colder air will slowly start to shift a little bit further south, getting into Idaho, getting into Wyoming, getting into portions of Colorado. With the above average temperature anomalies, this is December 30th, well to the central and eastern, southeastern parts of the U.S., where we see that colder band well to the north, starting to get into the Great Lakes, getting into portions of the upper mid-Atlantic, into the New England area. So, but as we get into that January 1st timeframe, we're starting to see the beginning signs of the transition of a kind of a cross polar flow type setup, where we have these bands taking advantage of that Arctic air into Alaska and to Canada, and there's going to be having that cross polar flow with these a pretty good setup of cold shots trying to enter into the U.S., mainly predominantly in our northern areas, into the Great Lakes, eventually getting into the Midwest, going into portions of the Northeast and New England. And that is through January 1st. And then again, it's going to be a slow process, but by the time we get into January 2nd, January 3rd timeframe of the latest ensemble members, we start to see more of that colder anomaly air trying to shift a little bit further south, getting into, deeper into California, deeper into Arizona, deeper into portions of New Mexico, trying to hint, at least again, portions of the South and the Southeast, where the, below average temperature anomalies are set up along this cross polar flow. That's through kind of January 2nd. So again, I do feel a pattern flip's going to be on the table, but it's going to be well after Christmas and more towards January. And starting January, we could have a little bit more sustainable colder air for more widespread parts of the country. So here's the setup over the next 15 days, predominantly where the precipitation could fall over the next 15 days. We do still see predominantly dry for the midsection of the country where we're kind of much locked in this pattern for the next 10 to 15 days, right? And so there's the setup of the heavier rains over the south and the southeast, and then the heavier rains where we've been seeing them out here in the west coast. There's your snow with the beginning stages of that cross polar flow starting to kind of set up as we get towards after that Christmas time frame, towards the end of the year, with that predominantly your snow line is going to be well to the north into our northern states, into the north, and into the Great Lakes, portions of the mid-Atlantic, but predominantly going to be up here into New England, with again the ski country just getting inundated, especially in Idaho and Montana. I mean, they're going to be crushed. So very heavy snow in that neck of the woods for sure. And the same deal with the GFS model kind of shows the same thing. So they're both congruency of showing pretty much over the next 10 to 15 days with our snow line to the north and our ski resorts being, plenty of snow for them as well. So, hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video. Definitely leave your comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel to catch the latest update where I protect you before and after the storm.